So I'm going to show you today an example of how the AIM Digital workbooks may be used by students. So this is an example of a typical student book. It's the Boucle Violette kit, student book. So in the on the first few pages, the students have their puppets. Of course, they won't be coloring and cutting them out in this version, but they're here as a reference for the students. And then just as in the hard copy student book or copies of the Blackline Masters, the students have their play here written out for them, and they can turn the pages just as if they had the written copies. Now we come to the first activity, Choisis le bon mot, or in Spanish, elegir las palabras correctas. And what the students need to do is read the sentence, and then they select the correct word either just by clicking, and one or the other will appear. So we want to click the correct one. Les trois ours décident de marcher dans la forêt. Quand l'histoire commence, Boucle Violette arrive à la maison des trois ours. So they move through, and it's a fairly simple and quick process to do this Choisis le bon mot. They don't have to write it out. And once the whole page is complete, they can ask you to correct it, or you can go in at the end of the day and look at what they've done. If it's correct, you can put a check mark. Now, if it's not correct, you have the option to put an X. I prefer not to have this red X here. You can just leave it blank. So anything that's not corrected would have a blank, and that would indicate to the students they have to go and correct. So some blank, some there. And once it's all corrected, you check every single one, and then you can indicate to the students that they're ready to move on to the next page by checking corriger page 1 as you do in your paper copy. So it's just the same, really. So now we move on to the next activity, mets les mots en ordre, poner las palabras en orden, put the sentences in order. And so what they do is they just copy, just as they would with the hard copy paper version, boucle, violette, frappe, and so on. Once they are finished putting the words in order in writing, then they click on this box and can draw an illustration of the sentence, which I'm sure they will do far better than I would. So we have Boucle Violette here, and she's knocking on the door. So yeah, if they don't like it, they can clear it. If they want to start again, do a different version of Boucle Violette that they like better, they can do so until they're ready to save it and leave it for you to correct. And again, same process, you check it or not, and then when it's all correct, all checked, and page 1 is corrigé. Page 1 is all corrected. Next, we come to phrases bizarres, les phrases bizarres and mes phrases bizarres. In les phrases bizarres, las oraciones locas, the students don't have to write anything, they just click on. So what was that? I'm going to clear that. And Boucle Violette frappe à la porte et bébé ours ouvre la porte. So you have bébé ours in there, bébé ours, and so they're knocking on the door again. So yeah, they do their little image, and again, if they don't like it, they clear it and start all over again. And then they save what they like. And same process for correction. Mes phrases bizarres, well, here they're going to create their own sentences, so you know they can key it in. Bébé ours saute avec Papa ours, or whatever you would like to write, and they click on the little square and draw their images. All right, so now we're coming to the more challenging language manipulation activities, which are les questions totales, but of course you will have prepared the students well for this one. The students read through this question just as they would do in their paper copies and write the response, of course, in a full and complete phrase complète. And then once they're done, they leave the page for you to correct, and you can make a check if it's all correct or not if it's not. And up at the top, you have the corrigé, all of the 5 pages of this activity. Moving on to question partielle, it's the same thing. They write their answers, cette histoire, s'appelle, and so on. and you correct the pages. So there are a few pages of this. Now we come to Raconte l'histoire avec des mots différents, the story retelling activity. The students will look for what is the first image of the story. Well, it's right here. Boucle Violette. Boucle Violette arrive à la maison des trois ours. Elle pense, qu'est-ce qu'il y a dans cette maison? So as they work through the images, they find the second one, they find the third one. They retell the story in their own words. And eventually, well, hopefully at this point, if they're working with a partner at home, they can do this by Skype or FaceTime or some version of the ability to work together and hopefully see each other. And if they're in class together again, then they can work in a partner, as they do with all the activities. So what they eventually will do is send you, as we say right here, fais une vidéo de ton histoire avec des mots différents. They'll send you a video just taken with their iPhone of their story retelling, the full and complete story retelling. Very easy to film on iPhones or iPads these days. And you'll have those to view as one of their oral proficiency marks. So next on to Boucle Violette, Histoire avec des mots différents, story retelling in writing. The students will be writing, as they do with the paper copies, on the line with the pencil. So Boucle Violette est une fille. So let's say they wrote un garçon. Well, obviously that's not correct. So you would write at the top, you would above the word that is incorrect, you could write ME, mot incorrect, and that would indicate to the students that that's not correct. Well, it's a very obvious mistake that I'm sure no students are going to make. But you can also, of course, if there's a règle en rap that applies, you can always write rap and the number above to indicate what they need to correct. So whatever process you're in the error correction code, you may use that. If let's say they wrote Violette without an S and they're just at a very beginning stage and not able to self-correct, well, you just write the correct one above. They erase your word and then they write the correct word below. So you can do that as well if you want to give them the answer. All right, so moving on, we have a number of pages for them to write their retellings, as we do in the hard copy books. And we move into Boucle Violette, Qu'est-ce qui se passe après? The story extension activity, the fun activity for kids to do in partners. And hopefully they will be able to do that together if they're away right now with video conferencing of some sort, and they write together. Same process, you can correct above, and here are all of the corrigés. You can work through one line at a time if you like. So let's say one line is correct, so you've corrected that line and that line and that line. This line has an error in it. You can write what it is. Let's say this word has rap numéro 2, and you should be correcting with that. And so eventually, though, the whole page will be correct. You check every line, and you can then check corriger page 1. And we move forward to all of the different pages for them to write. Now, the publie-ton livre, the book publishing process in AIM, after they do their extensions, we publish their books. They can't really do that with this, but it is an example, a format for them. If you have the hard copy, you would copy that for the students, and they could use that. Or they can use their own versions, their own formats for their book publishing. Here we have oral activities, which can also be done in writing. There's this written option as well. So they just click the correct one, and hopefully they will be able to do this with a partner in some way together, either when they're at school, of course, or if they're not at school, they can work these days digitally somehow, even by phone. So you would, for mêler les mots en ordre, same process. You're just going to write you're going to just click on the words. Bébé ours pleure dans, it's not cuisine, so it's là. And we want to remove this one, so that's not correct. So bébé ours pleure dans la cuisine, and there we go. So that's that one. And the other ones are purely oral, so the students will be working together on those ones. Again with this one. This one, they'll need to see each other. So they're showing each other the gestures together. And here we have our reference section. So we have all of the words that lead up to, that have been introduced and learned, hopefully, by the students up to this point. So they're up to step 2 kit. So we have all the words from step 1. We have all the words from step 2. We also, in the step 2 kits, introduce Mon Livre de mots, which is a sort of a dictionary of all of the words in alphabetical order that they've learned to date. So it's a reference when they're writing their stories in particular. We have all of the different songs and rap posters. We have enrichment activities. So all of the characters, the students can write something about the characters, writing in role, speaking as if they are the character, describing themselves, talking about themselves. And then we have another option for a creative story. What happens before Boucle Violette goes to La Maison des Trois Ours? What brings her to be walking into the forest that day? So you can build up to that story as well through this story. Well, it's an extension the other way. All right, so I hope this was helpful in helping you understand how this book works. Now, one thing I want to show you here is that you can skip to activities. You can just skip over to whatever activity you want to have a look at. You can zoom in. So if you need to see something more closely, you can go up and down the pages with this up and down arrow. And then if you want to get out, you want to see how much the student has completed. Here it indicates that I've completed the book 4%. So that just gives you a little bit of an indication as to how much is done. Well, thank you very much for listening. I hope you are well, and look after yourselves, everyone. We will hopefully get together again sometime soon. Thanks for listening. Bye-bye.